Gavin Newsom.
What do you think about our mate, Gav? I'm not a fan either.
On the other hand, does ability actually matter anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, that is very true. That's a very good point. Donald Trump has bankrupted a lot of people, and then he became the president twice. The presenting sponsor for Socially Democratic is Dunn Street. Dunn Street is a campaign agency that specialises in community organising. We only work with people and organisations who want to build power to make the world a better place. And if you want to create change in your world in 2026, then hit us up at dunstreet.com.au. A special shout out to all of our Patreon members. If you want to join those wonderful supporters of our podcast and financially support our show so we can continue to produce great episodes every week, then we encourage you to click on the link in the show notes and subscribe to join the Patreon community of Socially Democratic. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by Maurice Blackburn Lawyers. For over a century, Maurice Blackburn has stood up for fairness, championing the rights of everyday Australians and shaping landmark legal reforms. Today, they're harnessing new technologies to make justice more accessible, more efficient, and more responsive to the needs of modern Australia. All right, let's get on with today's episode. We are taping this one on a Thursday morning on the land of the rising sun. I am in Tokyo on holiday, but the pod never stops.
So jealous.
I know. And if anyone's watching on YouTube, I really went to great lengths to come up with the most Japanese background. I'm not putting it on. It's not AI. It actually is my background. But we're not talking about Japanese politics today. We're talking about American politics, and that laugh in the background may be a familiar voice. She is a senior Democratic consultant. She's a former field organizer for Obama America, and she's also been our regular US politics guest. I think she hung out with us for 5 or 4 episodes in the lead up to the US presidential election in 2024. Katie Parsons, welcome back to Socially Democratic.
Hi. Thanks. Great to be back.
So there's sort of 3 things I want to talk to you about today. It's been a while since we've done a bit of a US episode. I want to talk about the 2024 DNC campaign review that has just been released. And even the background to the review has been controversial. And I'm particularly interested in talking to you because, as I said before, we did 3 or 4 episodes in the lead up to the 2024 presidential. Yeah. And then you and I and Ross did a review episode after the loss, which was kind of like maybe a week after. So things were still pretty raw. Oh, yeah. Definitely. I'm emotional just talking about it.
Yeah.
But now that we've got this review, we sort of asked ourselves questions at the time, and a lot of the answers you guys were saying were, well, this is going to have to be borne out in the review. And I'm wondering, did we get the review that we needed? So we'll talk a bit about that, but I also want to talk a bit about the midterms because they're coming up. It's 6 months away, if that. And then what happens after the midterms is we all turn our attention to the presidential primaries, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of it, so it just all happens so quickly. So they're the 3 things I want to talk about, the autopsy, midterms, and then who are the Democratic prospects who are going to put their hand up for a run at the presidency. But let's talk about the review to begin with.
Yeah.
A review is no stranger to our Australian audience. After every campaign review, win or lose, the Labor Party has to do a big audit, and I'm sure most political parties around the world do that. And after the 2024 Harris presidential campaign, everyone was waiting to see, what the review would find, what went wrong, what were the lessons that could be learned. And given there was such a traumatically bad result for the party, not just for the presidential, but for the down ballot races as well, for Senate and House, there's got to be a lot of pressure on this particular review, right?
Absolutely.
And arguably one of the most important reviews in recent Democratic Party history. But it seems like even the review, the party has stuffed up. Give us a bit of context to the background behind all of this before we actually go to what was in the heart of the review itself.
Yeah, it's so embarrassing. Well, so I want to just first give a little background about where I'm coming from this personally on the post-mortem piece, which is what we typically call it in certain circles, I guess. So in 2020, I led one of the largest post-mortem review processes for the House and Senate that was paid for, put together, sponsored, whatever, by a couple of outside groups that did a lot of spending and wanted to assess what had gone right and wrong. Even though we won the presidential election, we didn't do as well in the House and Senate as expected. And so they were looking for answers to that. And I've done another similar postmortem for state House and Senate races. So like the state legislature races in 2022, which is just to say that I'm intimately familiar with the work that goes into a really thorough review. You are talking to hundreds of people, you're reviewing ads, you're reviewing everybody else's postmortem, the final data that comes, once the voter file data is actually released in the spring. There's a lot to it. It's not a joke. It's not a small thing. And so when
it's almost
it's
a thankless task as well. Like I know that one of the hardest jobs for a party secretary or campaign director is, after winning the damn election, is then to find people to step up and actually do the review. Like that's a hard job because people are like going, oh man, there's so much work that goes into this.
Oh yeah, it was massive. We had a huge team for every one of these, and we got ours done in about 6 months both times. But that was a sprint for everybody involved. So, which is not just to talk about all this work that I did, but we finally got the DNC's, I'm doing air quotes here, postmortem. It was released a couple of weeks ago after a lot of pressure from Democratic donors and party members and supporters, et cetera. And because it had not been released, Ken Martin, who was the party chair, had promised when he was elected as party chair in, I think it was early February of 2025. He said, of course, the party is going to do this. We have a lot to learn. And there were delays and putting the report out. And then finally he said, definitively, we're not releasing it. And so, of course, that really cranked up the drama. Everybody thought, oh, he's hiding something. There was lots of speculation that this was to protect Kamala because she was going to run again, or it was because they found that Gaza was actually a crippling, cause for the defeat, and they're hiding that. There were just lots of these theories about why it hadn't been made public. Whatever. That was honestly months ago. But then other parties, not political parties, but groups, camps, whatever, started to release their own reviews. I know you talked to Greta and Josh a couple of weeks ago. I thought it was excellent. We also had one from Rob Flaherty, who was the digital director on the campaign. He kind of released an article, a really good one, laying out what he had told the people or the person who did the autopsy, just sort of getting his message out there. And all of this started to put pressure such that Ken Martin finally had to release what they had. And it turns out that it was no great smoking gun or, detailed reporting. It was almost like he handed it to somebody who did it as a side extra credit project, who didn't finish his homework. He, when he finally turned it in, there were sections missing, didn't bother to write a conclusion. There was conflicting information from one page to the next, a lot of unsubstantiated claims. Which, even if one of the excuses was, oh, there was anonymous comments that people gave in interviews, you can still describe who the information came from without naming names, right? So it was like a bad book report. And so they didn't release it. And instead of saying early on, hey, this isn't up to snuff, we're not going to release it, and we're going to find somebody else to do it instead, they just stopped the process. So this has all come out. It's blown up for the party. It's been a lot of inside, gossip, baseball, whatever. Mostly, I don't think it's going to have that much of an impact on the real world of Democratic politics. The only people who are really mad about it are people who are focused on this every day. But the one like really important consequence is that donors are paying attention and they are not giving money to the party. And that really will have consequences in 2028, which I know we're going to be talking about, if something doesn't turn around, because the party infrastructure for supporting whoever the ultimate nominee is really critical. And we need, the DNC needs a lot of money to be able to do that.
Good summary.
Period.
Excellent summary. And I must admit, I'm drawn to the inside of baseball kind of topic. So I will ask one inside of baseball, because one of the criticisms you named was that they didn't source a lot of the folks that they'd spoken to. And people can correct me if I'm wrong here in Australia, but our reviews, we don't source either at all. And I think the theory behind it is if you do start sourcing, or that you are compelling people to be sourced, people won't contribute to the review. I actually think that sourcing is a good idea, because I actually think it then can give those that are reading the review a better sense of where, particularly in reviews where the party has lost, but even in winning as well. Maybe in winning, everybody wants to be sourced. But certainly when you lose, I think it helps folks understand, where is this criticism coming from, and is it based on people who were in the know? Because sometimes reviews can be weighted with people who may be tangentially involved in the campaign and not 100%. Necessarily in the campaign.
Totally agree. And so as far as sausage making, how we did it, we wouldn't necessarily say the person's name after every piece of insight or evidence, but would say, a senior campaign official. If we could be more specific than that without giving away who it was, a senior campaign official in Florida or something like that. Yeah. And we also did note down a lot of quotes and would go back to the person and ask them, hey, can we explicitly quote you here? Mostly that was for the positive things, no surprise. But it still adds some credibility to what you're saying. So I think it's unfair to say, oh, you should have named every single person. But there are ways, basically it just didn't pass the smell test that they had really done their homework. It felt like some dude's opinions.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was a typo, but it implied that at one point that the Democrats had lost the 2020 presidential election. What? Really? Yeah. I've not read it, because it's only been out for a week and I've been on holiday, so cut me some slack, everyone. But Katie, you certainly have reviewed it to some degree. What are the things that jump out at you from the autopsy that we can take from it in terms of getting ready for the next round of presidential elections?
I take zero insights from the official DNC autopsy. The couple of places that I'm looking are the report that Greta put out, which you guys talked about in great depth, and then this other report that was put out by the former digital director, who I think, even though it was brief, there was a ton of insights there. So a couple of interesting tidbits. Actually, the one that most was interesting to me, and maybe this does feel like inside baseball, he pointed out what a liability it was to have the campaign headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. So Joe Biden was from Wilmington. They had the campaign headquarters there. Once Harris was the candidate, it was too late to switch locations. But the report points out what a problem this was, because it's a small town. There wasn't enough space for people to live. Nobody wanted to move there. It's not like it's a cool place with lots to do. And you're asking all of these campaign folks to come and uproot their lives and work on a campaign. And all of this boils down to, it was very difficult to have everybody who was critical to decision-making in one place. And this is something that has driven me crazy in lots of elections that I've worked on, especially outside of the US, where there are always these battling centers of power. So you may have the party headquarters, and then the candidate headquarters, and then the union headquarters, and all of them are campaign headquarters for the same campaign. I have seen how crippling it can be for a campaign to not have all of the like at least senior folks in one place, all on the same page, working together. So it was an interesting point to see it show up in this report.
At the time, I did think it was odd that they chose Wilmington, and just because it's such a small place. Like if anyone's ever caught the Acela train from DC to New York, you go through you stop at Wilmington and you look out the window and it's like 6 tall buildings and that's it.
Yeah.
And
it was central to Joe Biden's brand, right? Like it made sense, but it didn't make sense.
No. What else from Rob Flaherty's piece? What else did you take away from his thoughts?
One is just how essential it is to start winning the culture, fighting as a party to define who we are and to change the national conversation to be on the terms that we want conversation to be on. This is something that Republicans really mastered starting in 2016 and really did incredibly well leading into 2024. And what does that look like? It's having all of the podcast hosts talking in the terms that Republicans want them to be speaking in. It's infiltrating, all of the different cultural spaces where people are thinking and talking. People now, I think very broadly, are super skeptical of highly polished official campaign communications. And it's very clear what those official campaign communications are. They are not how we will win hearts and minds, and they come way too late. So we need to start figuring out how to talk to people now. He also pointed out how important YouTube is. That's really where like a vast majority of Americans are getting their news and general information. That's how people are people are watching it like it's TV. I am not one of those people, so I'm talking about it like they're aliens, but my dad is. So I've seen what this is like. And because the advertising infrastructure for YouTube is not something that we can measure as clearly as like some other platforms, I think we still haven't as a party really understood or mastered the degree to which we need to communicate over YouTube, both through advertising, but also through content, like people who are doing YouTube shows, like making sure that candidates are showing up or that important people are showing up.
Just jump on that YouTube stuff. It's just something that I think that maybe we in Australia, or the Labor Party, has done reasonably well, has been YouTube advertising, not the content, but the advertising. Those 6-second unskippables and 15-second unskippable ads. If you can crystallize your core message into 6 seconds, or you got a candidate that can do that, that's a reasonably powerful tool. And on both at state and federal, and even the Melbourne mayoral campaign, we spent a lot of money on YouTube. And the mayor was, doing sort of canvassing at local schools to catch all the teachers going in, and kids were running up to him because kids are watching YouTube. That's what kids do. They just watch YouTube the whole time. They're going, "You're the mayor." But and even in previous state campaigns, I remember sitting in a bar on a Thursday night after sort of finishing knocking off work during the campaign, and there's a guy playing music on his laptop and just watching YouTube at the same time. Our ads were coming up constantly. So that, it's a saturation point. YouTube is such a great way of doing it. Now, you're right. It's targeting is difficult. And I think you can only target by postcode or zip code. But even still, that can enable you to work out what kind of, you're not targeting down to the individual, but you are saturating it. And it was at the time anyway. I don't know what the prices are for YouTube ads these days, but reasonably cheap compared to what you'll be paying for TV advertising. Even in Australian campaigns, it's something that all campaign directors are struggling to just let go of, this fear of being able to say, we're not going to allocate however many million to TV ads and actually start to redirect that money into new areas. And I think it's very challenging, and it'll be a brave campaign director that does that, but it will be an important campaign director that does that. And clearly this is not happening in the US as well, because there's so much money still going into traditional paid TV advertising.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if it works this way in Australia, but typically, the campaigns here will have a paid media consultant, and that consultant, really, they do TV. They do TV ads rather than, I started working closely with a friend who is a paid media consultant, but she's really operates as digital first. And that's pretty unusual. And there are still lots of battles with other folks on the campaign that like, TV's part of the mix. We have to still, I always say, like, you have to play everywhere. You have to be visible everywhere because you never know which eyeballs you're going to get in the end. And if there is a platform, you have to have some presence. Otherwise, you're ceding it to the opposition. But most people are getting most of their content through digital platforms, even their TV. And so that has to be, and people expect to see different things. The content needs to look different. And if anything, you're starting to see television content look more like digital content, at least for non-political marketing brands. I don't know if you've started to see this on like regular TV. You'll see the ad for like a razor or some other like health product, and you can tell it looks like a TikTok ad, but this is a TV ad because they understand that that's how people are expecting to see content, and everything needs to shift.
There was one more point I think you wanted to mention out of that was consequential from the Flaherty piece.
It's one that is a nightmare to approach because I certainly don't have any answers here. But like, how are we using AI on campaigns moving forward? How is it affecting staffing? What does it mean to be using AI to help you create content rather than human beings, particularly when Democrats are pretty rapidly establishing their brand as like the human first. And that's important, but also this is a tool that we need to be using. What does it mean for content and how much we're putting out and what the content looks like? And then the one that I certainly understand the least, how we're going to solve, but ensuring that we are making sure that the large language models, which are how people are doing their research now, are presenting average voter with the information you want them to see. The way that we used to think about search engine optimization, right? Like you have to make sure that you've got your Wikipedia article and you've got to make sure that you're paying for SEO ads so that you come up as the first search when somebody's looking for information about your candidate. Well, now it's the LLM that is pulling up that information. So how do you influence what they're pulling up and making sure that it's what you want is going to be a whole new aspect of how we function.
One of the big things that came out of the Flaherty piece that I thought was interesting was the central argument that kind of was threaded through his whole article was that the Harris campaign had a brand problem, and that it was too busy focused on doing good tactics and didn't really know what its brand was. I hate that term brand though, because it sounds so commercial, trying to bring it into politics. But I would say it didn't know what essential. Campaign lacked a heart. Yeah. It didn't. What he was saying was, it didn't have a story. The candidate didn't have a story of why she was running, and then she couldn't translate that into then the manifestation of that story into tangible things, right?
Totally.
Well, I just 100% agreed with that. I just felt like that. And it actually made me reflect a lot more on campaigns since then even one campaign, I was a campaign director, and I sort of said within the first sort of 30 days, it was a long campaign, this campaign has no heart. We have no story right now. And if we don't hurry up and come up with one, and there is one, but we just need to articulate that and start to build that into, what are we trying to say about this constituency and our candidate in the center of it, and how that person is crucial to impacting your lives in the things that because we've got plenty of good ideas, but we can't just keep on spewing ideas at people because it's just going to get lost. What did you make of this sort of thesis from Rob?
Completely agree. If anything, she had a couple of different stories that were competing, but none of them were fully coherent. I was laughing earlier because I've been watching with my partner. He's never watched all of The West Wing, which is kind of hard to believe, but I've been watching with him, and we just got through the episode where Jed Bartlett's opponent is asked, why are you running for president? And he doesn't have an answer. And the whole episode, they're all running around laughing about how amazing this was, and then wanting to make sure that he had an answer to that. It's something you have to figure out, and it may seem obvious, but you actually have to make sure that you have a clear answer and that you can communicate it. So sorry to take you back to West Wing, but
But it's true though.
All the lessons are there.
I interviewed someone this year. I won't say who it was, but you can go back and listen. And I asked them the question, why do you want to be the job? And this is a left-wing softball, tossing podcast, right? They didn't have an answer. And I walked away from that interview going, I'm worried about.
And it's got to come from the gut, right? People, we're all focused on the authenticity now. That's not a new statement. We've been talking about it for years. Part of that authenticity is that people need to believe when you say why you're running, that you really believe it. There's got to be, your story has to lead to this answer. And it wasn't there. I completely agree that was a problem. I think Democrats also are struggling with their brand. And that's something that's been true for many, many cycles. And I think part of it is we're so focused on trying to be everything to everyone, instead of having one answer that we wholeheartedly believe in. And some people are going to disagree and some people, are going to love it. But hopefully, I still really believe that a lot of people just want to see leadership. And so, in fact, if you say something wholeheartedly that maybe they disagree with a little bit, if they know enough about you and understand your values and where you're coming from, that can be overcome. So that leadership piece, which is obviously what the presidential candidate should be supplying, but as a party too, it's something that we are dramatically lacking right now, and hopefully we will see as we start talking about these different potential presidential candidates, like some of them are better than others at starting to answer that question.
I'm going to ask you a heavy question here. Why do you think the Democrats have got to this place on this question of not understanding what their brand is? How did we get here? I mean, you said we're a Big Tent party, so there's lots of different opinions in there. Is that part of it? But I've always found that diversity is a strength of a good organisation, though. So why is this becoming a bit of a not an anchor, but a problem?
I don't know. I mean, it's fear. It's different entities battling for power. All of this is ever thus, right, with the political party. We also don't have, a political party in the United States does not mean the same thing that it does basically anywhere else in the world. I guess there technically is a convention and they do technically write and put out a platform, but no one has ever seen it. Even the people who work every single day to get their candidates elected have never seen it, don't even know that it exists. It has no weight the way that it does in, most other countries where that's, the platform is the manifesto and that's a promise you've made. So there's sure, obviously, but at least it's a big deal when you break the promise. So there is no mechanism currently to come to some agreement. There's no forcing mechanism. There are conversations, there are debates, there are places where we discuss these things, but we're never forced to write a single document that everybody actually has to work from.
That's interesting.
That's like a functional answer. Obviously, that's not that's the cause. Or the output, not the input. But I think having something like that would actually be helpful.
We're about to turn our attention to the midterms, and you'd like to have thought that by this stage the Democratic Party would have the answers to that question and many others, because that's what a good autopsy does. But we're heading into these midterms where the House is up for election in November, and parts of the Senate and obviously governor races, etc. And I want to start with the House, but maybe actually, I know in the order of questions I've got just the general sort of vibe about the House, but actually the redistricting is an important thing to probably talk about. So maybe we talk about that first. And I'm conscious of how complex that can get, but maybe for the Australian audience, you can sort of give us a bit of a sense of what redistricting is, how this particular battle started, what states have been at the center of it. There's been obviously been a lot of court fights and legislative battles. It started by the Republicans, who in the end has come out on top in this battle? And then we can talk about the actual House races. And will it have an impact, do you think?
It will absolutely have an impact. And Republicans have so far, and actually I think not enough can change between now and the election for this to change. Republicans are on top. Right now, they're probably netting anywhere from 7 to 10 seats from the redistricting process. There are 435 seats in the House. It used to grow. As population grew, we would have more seats. At some point, they were tired of growing it. I think there was some battle over how the seats were going to be reallocated, so they just decided, we're going to stop here. So as population grows, those seats need to be reallocated so that you're still, each representative is still representing roughly the same number of seats. So by tradition, mostly, every 10 years there's a census, and by tradition, after that census at the state level, those seats are reallocated. So actually, at the national level, the seats are reallocated across states. So you're seeing now, like Illinois, where I live, unfortunately, population is declining. We're going to lose a couple seats in the next full national after the census, but then within the states, the state legislature draws the lines. And typically that's only done every 10 years after the census process and after the number of seats has been reallocated. Donald Trump, always very talented at spotting an opportunity, saw like, oh, well, why don't we just redraw the lines and give ourselves more seats? Since, we're going to talk about midterms. We've talked about this before. Almost universally, midterms between presidential elections, you see a swing in who's got the majority in the House. The only time that hasn't happened was in modern history was in after 9/11, basically in a show of support for Bush in the early years. What was that, 2022? So we know that the Democrats are going to win the midterms kind of by tradition, but in order to make that a challenge and maybe even make it impossible, Trump suggested that encouraged state legislatures to redraw the lines to make it more difficult or impossible for Democrats to win in these new geographies.
And for Australians, everything that Katie just said is basically the same in Australia, except for the point where state legislators draw the lines. In Australia, we have a national, central, independent body called the Australian Electoral Commission, and they both determine the amount of seats across each of the states based on population, and they also do the boundaries as well. But are now enable in parties, political parties, and individual parties to make submissions about where they think the boundaries should go.
Yeah.
And they take those submissions and then they draw them. They publish first rounds. People can make amendments, and then they look at those amendments and they publish final rounds, and that's it. They're locked.
Yeah.
So the process is basically the same, except yours is political.
Well, exactly. So Trump basically, encouraged heavily the Texas state legislature to redraw their lines, give them 5 more seats. I don't know if he thought Democrats were not going to respond. I don't know. But of course, we did.
They did.
So California then, which actually already had in its, I don't know if it's state constitution or something, they had taken out political gerrymandering. They were trying to make the seats more fair. But in order to fight against what the Republicans were doing, passed a ballot initiative so that we could make California redistricting political again. And then I think we got 5 more seats. So it was like even Steven. And then Trump was trying to push leadership in other states to get them to do the same thing. In some places they did, and some they didn't. Then there's also a court case, yada, yada, yada. It's long and involved. It still isn't settled. In fact, there was another Supreme Court case, I think it came down last night, that impacts 1 seat in this, Alabama. The important thing coming out of the Supreme Court ruling from a couple weeks ago, Calais is the name of it, like the place in France, is it basically said, well, you can gerrymander, you can draw your lines funny based on politics, no problem. But you definitely can't consider race. And that sounds like a good thing. But what that in fact did was make it so that there were several districts that had been drawn basically to make sure that, especially in the South, where there were large Black populations, but they didn't have a lot of political power, these lines were drawn to ensure that basically they could elect a Black representative. This has been taken away. Particularly southern states are redrawing their lines. And in addition to losing Democratic seats, we're likely to lose a third of the Black members of Congress in this next election, just because of this gerrymandering or this redrawing. And I think that's going to have really like an even more long-term impact.
Yeah. And the argument from the court was, by some of the members anyway, that when this law was first introduced at a time when there was underrepresentation, and that the relationship was, Jim Crow was still very prevalent in the United States. That is now not the case. That was their argument, and that we don't need to have this protection anymore. But we're about to find out whether they're right or wrong, because if the number of Black representatives in Congress falls off a cliff, then it turns out, well, actually, you misread the mood of the American people, and there still is some forms of institutional racism, even in our politics, has now meant that the diversity of our candidates doesn't reflect the communities that they are seeking to represent. It'll be interesting to see what happens. And I've seen people on the Democratic side argue about this decision, where some have said, no, I think this is the right decision now. And others go, no, this is still going to be a problem.
Interesting.
Yeah. And my theory is, well, we'll find out, won't we? So the House, we're feeling good about it. And obviously history suggests that Democrats should feel good about it. And the polls also suggest that we should feel good about it. 6 to 8 point leads right now. So it all sounds very promising on paper, but we've just spent half an hour talking about how the Democrats haven't learned the lessons of the last presidential. What's your read going into November? Should Democrats be as confident as they are? Like, is this because the Republicans are doing a shit job? Or is this because the Democrats are starting to act together at a local level?
Right. So I think we should still be optimistic. I still think we are very likely to win the House. We need roughly 5 seats. There are roughly 15 to 19 competitive seats. Even with the 7 to 10 that Republicans are taking back through this redistricting process, we're still likely to get over that hump of 5 seats. So I'm not so worried about the House. Obviously things could change, but that is not one that really keeps me up. Your question is, is that something the Democrats are doing really well? No. I think, on a race by race basis, I do think you're seeing, and we're going to talk about this more when we talk about the Senate, but I do think Democrats are doing a good job of, in the primaries, electing candidates that are more electable. And that doesn't necessarily mean, they're all more progressive or they're all more moderate. What I think we're seeing, and I'm pleased by, is that it fits the district. In places where the district is very progressive, they're electing progressive folks in their primaries, and they could win there. But as a party, we don't have a singular message the way that, for example, in 2018, Democrats ran on healthcare and were very effective and disciplined on that across the board. There is no singular message other than, defeat Trump. Like, affordability is a word that's thrown around, but that's not a plan the way that we've had in the past.
So turning to the Senate then, I did read somewhere where some Democrats are feeling good about taking back the Senate. And I was like, what? And you and I were talking off air about that. So I'm keen to get your sense of what's your read on the Senate? Like, which races are the ones that are up for grabs that we can make inroads in? But I can't see the math
to taking back control of the Senate at this midterm?
Yeah, it's really tricky. It kind of depends on how big that wave is, right? If the Dem wave really is +8, I don't know if it's +13, then yeah, we take the Senate back. So I am not so optimistic as some others, but there are interesting pathways. So a couple of the states that are being talked about, and these actually aren't the ones that we're most likely to win, but I think they're some of the most interesting. Maine and Alaska. So Maine has been the subject of lots of discussion on the Democratic side because Susan Collins, the Republican, has been senator for Maine forever and ever. Very moderate, or at least independent, because Maine is like typically a Democratic state, but has continued to vote for Susan Collins. The candidate, this random ass guy, Graham Plattner, who is an oyster farmer, Marine, right? I mean, if you're paying attention to American politics, you've probably seen him come up. He's running.
He's the guy that allegedly, he has a Nazi-ish tattoo on his chest. Yeah. There's weird stories as to how that got on that chest. Yeah. Anyway, so there's a lot he has a past. He has a past, but he's also very compelling. Like, he's got the charisma. We were talking earlier about authenticity and somebody who can answer the question why you're running. He has an answer with conviction. He also has this very sketchy tattoo. He covered it up at least. Just in the last week, and in fact, in the last couple of hours, there's been more fallout from some like sects, like to some of his staffers or something, that have been uncovered. So he is not a perfect candidate by any stretch, but he's doing really well. He's way ahead in the polls, both in the primary. In fact, the other primary candidate just dropped out because she was doing so poorly. He hasn't yet won the primary, but he will win. He's a lock, yeah.
Yeah, and then he very well could beat Susan Collins because it's a state that goes for independence, and he is this like very anti-status quo candidate, which I think is the secret to winning an election anywhere in the world right now, and has been for the last couple of years. We talked about that actually a little bit in December when we were talking about races around the world. Where are people winning? It's where you've got some sort of outsider or anti-status quo candidate. So I expect to see him do well. Another place, Alaska, is not really the first on the list that we'll take, but Mariel Peltola, who was a rep who won statewide, is running for Senate again as a Democrat. And I think we could see her win, which could be enough to really clinch it for us as like the fourth state. Yeah. The ones that we're more likely to win, North Carolina, we have an amazing candidate trying to fill. This is so Tom Tillis's seat, who he was running, or he was the senator and dropped out because he got in some beef with Trump, and rather than be harangued by him through another campaign. So Roy Cooper, who I think was governor of North Carolina previously, very popular, is going to run. I think he's very likely to win. Sherrod Brown, who was senator from Ohio in the past and then lost, is running again. He's older, but he's your like very quintessential pro-labor guy. So if a Democrat's going to win in Ohio, I think he's the one to do it. There are a couple of others. I don't know how much time you want to spend on this.
I guess what I'm hearing from you now is there is a pathway to 51. Not easy though, but there is a pathway. I mean, if you're including Alaska in there, geez, I mean, that feels like it's a challenging pathway, but you sound upbeat about it.
I think, can we find 4 out of like 9 or 10 potential seats? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we have the midterms. People are celebrating Thanksgiving. Trees go up. Christmas, Hanukkah.
the rest. While that's happening, there are people who are sitting down with their families and having hard conversations about whether or not I'm going to run for president and seek the Democratic nomination. And then all of a sudden in January, February next year, people start announcing their candidacy. Like Obama did in January 2006 in Illinois, which is in, oh my God, my brain's broken. What's the capital of Illinois?
Springfield,
Illinois, yeah.
Not Chicago, though we like to believe it.
Yeah. It would be a very good trivia night to try and name all 50 capitals of all the states in the United States, because there's some tough ones in there. Sacramento, California. All right. So what I want to do now is I want us to just quickly. It is the right time, I think, to start to actually speculate who are going to be the nominee, who are going to put their hand up. But I've put them into 3 tiers. Tier 1 is definitely running. So things like they've already been on Meet the Press. They've got a book tour. Their denial was not actually a denial, and they've been spotted in Iowa or New Hampshire. Like, they are definitely running. Tier 2 is actively creating opportunity, I think, which is your words. So they're keeping their powder dry. They're not running. They're very focused on their current job, but their pollsters have been incredibly busy. And then the third one is sort of unlikely but interesting. Tier 3. So, I'm here for the convention. Great candidate, wrong decade. Donors are curious. Or maybe they're kind of, I'm not running this time, seriously, but I'm getting my name out there. I'm building a bit of a brand for the next time is kind of. So we came up with a list, and then I asked you to then allocate them into that list. And I just see on your notes you've added 2 other names, which interesting. Okay,
just for funsies,
Yeah. Maybe we need a 4th category just for funsies. Okay, so let's start with tier 1. Definitely running. Who do you put in that tier, Katie Parsons?
And it's already a big list. All right, So I'm going to tell you all of them, and then we'll go back through. Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, J.B. Pritzker, Pete Buttigieg, Rahm Emanuel, Mark Kelly, Ro Khanna, Cory Booker, and Andy Bashir. I think all of them, I'm not saying they're definitely running, but they definitely fit into the various criteria, right? They've been on a book tour, either showing up to the important dinners in important either early states or swing states. They're doing the things to demonstrate that they're really serious, even though some of them still may not run. So Gavin Newsom.
What do you think about our mate Gav?
Too smarmy.
I'm not a fan either.
Yeah, but he's really popular. He's popular with the young kids, which is funny to me. But actually, in some ways, that makes sense, because I think he actually understands social media better than a lot of Democrats in general, like full stop. He's been really active on Twitter. He's done a lot mimicking Trump and his style to mock him. He'll do the tweets with all caps. Thank you for your attention to the matter. All of this, like, I love to see him troll Trump. That's really fun. He's very good at throwing out the progressive message. I don't necessarily believe him on anything. He's been the governor of California for the last couple of cycles. He's not running this time because he was termed out. But I'm not sure that America is ready to elect a smarmy governor from California again. I don't want to say they won't elect anybody from California, because there's some other folks on the list who I think are interesting, and they're also from California. But I still don't believe it's going to be him, even though he's often listed as a favorite. 2
things I want to say as a negative for Gavin Newsom is, if one of the criticisms of the Democratic Party in the last couple of years has been they only care about the coastal states and they don't worry about the flyover states, Gavin Newsom just reeks. Yeah. His politics reeks that. And the second thing is, totally, California's a basket case. And he's getting a lot of shit for it from the Republicans, and that's going to be hanging around his neck the whole campaign. So they're the two downsides, I think, for Gavin.
Yeah. I mean, on the other hand, like, does ability actually matter anymore? I don't know. But
that's true.
Still a fair,
that is true.
It's still a fair
that is very
criticism.
True. That's a very good point. Donald Trump has bankrupted a lot of people, and then he became the president twice.
Yeah.
So what do we know? Kamala Harris on that list. Who would have thunk it?
I really wish she had run for governor in California. She would have had it sewn up, I think. But yeah, I'm really annoyed, frankly, that she's almost certainly running again. She's raising money. She's talking about running. She's got the book. She's going to the dinners. I don't think she has any more chance. If anything, she had a better chance in 2024 than she will again in the future or had before that. She was never a particularly strong candidate. She has certainly great name ID, but I don't know that that's necessarily a strength. I just don't know what she brings to the table, frankly.
She's also written a book and was doing the book tour. And I think she was interviewed by someone from an Australian journalist from, I think it was from the ABC, which is kind of like, you know what the ABC is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Like the BBC, you know. And it was, I think, either her staffer didn't brief her on the nature of the interview, but the last couple of questions were pointed. It wasn't book tour questions, you know, like what font did you choose? Like it was a question around her candidacy the last time and the issues that she had with distancing herself from President Biden. And she didn't want to answer the question. And she sort of said, we're not doing this. And then the staffer came in and interrupted. And so obviously the ABC captured all of that. And I looked at this and was like, you still can't answer tough questions from the last time. Why do you want to run again? Like you haven't resolved the past. How can you seek to change the future? I just was like, but I also was like, oh shit, you're running again. I don't know why it was in that moment that it hit me, but I was like, you genuinely think you can run and win. I am surprised. I actually am. It's the one that shocks me the most.
Yeah. I mean, it shouldn't, but yeah. As a friend of mine said, leave us alone. Just go be the president of a university or something. I don't know.
Another one on your list that doesn't shock me, but and I like Cory Booker. I like Cory Booker. I really do. I actually like him, but I think you should become the guy in the Senate that does a great job being a senator. You know, is that sort of that link from the past generation to the new generation, and you know that mentors young senators coming in, and you know because you're an incredibly smart guy, you're a caring person. I assume that you're a wonderful human being. I get a sense from his social media presence that the guy actually cares, but. I don't know. Just based on his run last time, he was one of those. Well, Harris was as well. Actually, I'm talking 2020. Just fizzled out early.
Yeah, he's a perpetual candidate at this point. I think he likes running. He's a good candidate in the sense that he has a lot of charisma in person and has a lot of energy. But I also am surprised to see him making all the moves that as if he's really serious about running again. But he had this big filibuster in the Senate, longest filibuster ever. I think it was 25 hours in the end or something like that. Earlier this year, maybe, that everybody was taking that moment to say, oh, he's running, but also he's been making other motions to indicate that he's seriously considering it. This is one of those ones where I don't know that he's actually going to run, because I wouldn't be surprised if he's waiting to see if he's got donors who will back him. I don't know how much he's going to be looking at the polls, because he was a long shot candidate all the previous times too. But I suspect if he can raise the money, he'll run. If he can't, I assume he wouldn't. But he's making the motions. Yeah.
Out of those ones that you've listed, who's your dark horse? Who's the one that everyone needs to keep an eye on? Because obviously Newsom's the front runner and Harris as well.
Oh, as a dark horse, I mean, I don't know if any of these are dark horses. I mean, I want to talk about J.B. Pritzker because he's my governor, and I think he's excellent, despite being a billionaire, which, you know, we all were rolling our eyes when he ran for governor. He has been very progressive. He has stuck to what he ran on. I think he is a really effective communicator. I don't know that he would make it. You know, you mentioned the coastal elite thing, and while Illinois is a Midwestern state, it's not on the coasts. I think it still has a little bit of that vibe, and so I think we have yet to see how he'll do with Middle America. But I think he's a serious candidate. I think he is absolutely running without a question, which in some ways makes me sad because I want him to continue being our governor. Yeah. Ro Khanna, I think, could be really interesting. He is a congressman from California. I mentioned earlier, I think there's some interesting candidates from California. He is more in the AOC Bernie political camp, but also because he's from California, Silicon Valley area, has close ties with tech. So he can kind of bridge those two quite different communities right now, and is very progressive, but I think without some of the baggage that AOC brings, for example, who I think would be an excellent candidate, but is probably so polarizing that I don't know if she could possibly win the presidency, certainly. I think
what about Andy Beshear?
Yeah, okay. Andy Beshear, former governor of Kentucky, he won. So Kentucky is a very, very red state, sort of the South, the Mid-South. But he won the governor's race at least 2, maybe 3 times. I don't remember exactly, but in this very conservative area. So he has demonstrated that he can win the votes of this Middle America kind of maybe conservative, but also open voter who many people in the party are looking for. I don't think he's super charismatic. He doesn't have huge name ID. He's a name that like all the wonks are talking about, but regular American who's not from Kentucky has never heard of him. But he's an interesting candidate on there.
And then Rahm Emanuel's the other interesting one as well, also from your hometown.
Yeah, he is making the motions. He's going on the talk shows. He's putting out
doing
policies.
The talk shows for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely trying to, I was talking before about the need for leadership, party leadership, somebody going out and making an argument on behalf of Democrats. I think he's trying to do that work. Pete Buttigieg also really doing that work well, I think. So I think there's every chance he runs. I don't think he can win the primary. He's too old. He comes from the old guard, all of that anti-establishment, anti-status quo stuff that I was talking about before, even though his brand is like, tell him like it is, don't pull any punches, which is why I'm sure he thinks he has a path and why he could. I think those other things are going to make it difficult.
Before we move to tier 2, the question that I have for you, and in terms of, because there are 2 elections here we're trying to win. We're trying to first win the Democratic primary, and then you're trying to go on and actually then get the whole country to vote for you. And they are not the same constituencies. And one thing that we learned from this Bernie Sanders Hillary primary and then the Bernie Sanders ultimately Joe Biden primary was that there was a battle going on within the Democratic base between what I would say, and this is a generalization here, obviously doesn't completely fit within this, young, urban, progressive, college-educated, white, middle-class folk versus older, traditional, probably mostly African American and probably mostly African American women who are, going to church, good people, kind of traditionalist Democrat. And so far in those two races, Clinton versus Sanders and then Biden versus Sanders, the latter group won out. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering how long will that always be the case, or will we see a shift in this primary season? Because I'm looking at that list of all those number ones. And in fact, I'm looking at that whole list that we've got here, and I don't know, I can see who can win the votes of the first group, the, white, middle-class, educated progressives that live in the cities. I can't see who gets the votes of the African-American Democratic voting community.
I agree. I agree. It makes me very nervous. Obviously, this is like gross generalization. But I think that candidates who do well with that audience who are voting for a traditionalist, it's not that they have to be moderate even, but they do have to be a grown-up. So, which is how I think we could get to a Barack Obama as the winner of a primary, for example. I remember, in the early primary states, obviously you had Iowa, which is mostly white, but South Carolina coming soon on the heels of that. Lots of Black women in particular saying, I'm terrified that he's going to be shot, or I cannot believe that white people will vote for him. But as soon as there was some evidence that was going to happen, you started seeing those more traditionalist voters lining up. As long as I think it's a pragmatic voting group, because they, again, broad brush, gross generalization, they can't afford to take a risk and try to be cute about who they're putting up. They're looking for a sure bet. And so that's how I think AOC is such an interesting candidate to me and person, because she's actually really savvy. We have this imagination of her as, a real radical extremist who doesn't understand the way of the world, but actually in many ways she, I think, understands it better than many politicians on the left or maybe anywhere. And I think she understands her strengths and weaknesses, and she's a very effective communicator. I think if you started to see any evidence that she could win, those undecided voters or middle America voters, I think she would be a juggernaut. And maybe that's why she and Bernie were doing those tours right after the election. Yeah, exactly. So and they were doing those in middle America and building big crowds. I think those are maybe attempts at building proof points that they could win there. So that's not to throw my hat behind her, but just as the type of more anti-status quo, interesting candidate, could they get the support of the more traditionalist voter? I think that is what they're going to have to demonstrate first to win those votes.
So, this is a good segue into tier two, because you've put AOC in tier two. Why don't you run through who you got in tier two to begin with, and then we can, to be fair, you don't have many in tier three. In fact, you've only got Wes Moore in tier three.
I really struggled. That's kind of why I put the funsies ones in, because I think so many of these people are still, they're still indicating that they're considering it, which I think still puts them in two. I don't know. Okay, so in category 2, AOC, Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, who was considered, very publicly considered for the VP role for Kamala, but passed over for various reasons. Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan. I definitely want to talk about her. Amy Klobuchar, senator from Minnesota. She's run a couple times. Ruben Gallego, who's a brand new senator from Arizona. Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut, John Ossoff, senator from Georgia, who's got his his reelection is this year for that Senate role. So part of why he's in two is that he's focused on that. And then Alyssa Slotkin, who is a senator from Michigan, had been a member of Congress, and then I think just in the last election became senator. So new.
I do not for her.
Did you really? Yeah,
That's
she's a great. That's the reason. Maybe she's a 3. Yeah, obviously. All you.
It was all me. I mean, that's a big group of 2s. Is there anything else you wanted to say on AOC? I mean, should we be surprised that she's on this list? Because she's not been around that long, but you think about it, she probably has been around long enough. And who cares about tenure? Like, Obama was a junior senator when he ran, and everyone then said, "Oh, you haven't done your time." But I don't think that matters anymore. It's in the end, an election is a popularity contest, and how popular are you? People know AOC, so she doesn't need to have done tenure.
Yeah, well, she's only been there since 2019. Okay, I just Googled very quickly because I thought she'd been there for ages. Yeah.
It's been a long decade.
It has been a long decade. But I think she takes up the brain space far more of everybody in America than most of the other people on this list. So she's got the name ID, like a Nancy Pelosi, right? Like she was known by everybody, never ran for president, understood her role. And I think that may be AOC's position forever. Or maybe you'll see her run for Senate, actually, in New York.
I thought she was going to run for Senate in New York. I thought she was going to tell old mate
Schumer
to just shimmer off and let me have a crack at it. But then if you sit down and thinking about it, because naturally you go, you're only a Congress person, you should probably be a governor or a senator if you actually want to have a proper tilt at the presidency. So maybe you should run for Senate. But if I was her, I'd go, why? Everyone knows me anyway. What's Senate going to make any difference? That I'm a legislator? I've been working my ass off in the House trying to get bills through all the time. Like I've done my tour, even though I've only been here for 20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you run for Senate so you don't have to run every 2 years, probably.
Yeah.
But or maybe she's aiming for leadership. That could be interesting. She's. I think I keep her into because of the oligarchy tour. I think she's still one of the most present voices politically for the party. She certainly is a leader of the party. So I think she deserves to be on the list. She's very savvy. I don't think she will run if she doesn't see a path.
You know that she's starting to move, what I would say, to the center when the hard left are now starting to call her a Zionist. Right. She's getting eaten by her own people. So, welcome to the center, Alex. It's warm and fuzzy over here. Josh Shapiro, interesting you put him in 2. I actually would have put him in 1. I think Josh is running.
He's only in 2 because he's up for re-election. He's still focused on winning governor again.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just trying to go by the rules. I could have put nearly everybody in 1. So that was true. Part of it. I'm just trying to create some differentiation here. I think you're right. He's probably running, but he hasn't started to do the full national tour yet. And I think that's because he's got an election coming up.
Yeah. Strengths, Pennsylvania, critical state that we need to win if we're going to win the presidency. That's his home state.
Yeah.
I think he's good on the stump. I think his politics are sensible. Weaknesses, he's Jewish. Isn't that terrible to say that? But trying to get through a Democratic primary now. He's going going to get branded as a Zionist.
Yep.
And everything, all the other abuse that comes with it. So he's going to have a real problem with anti-Semitism within the party.
Yes.
What else? What strengths and weaknesses do you see for Josh Shapiro?
I think that's the biggest one. The biggest weakness. That it's going to be a litmus test for a lot of people. I'm sure he's trying to figure out, or maybe he knows, but how to walk that line. But I think that is one of the biggest hurdles for him.
Gretchen Whitmer, governor in Michigan.
Yeah. So Gretchen, man, you know, like 2 years ago, she was the one who was first out of my mouth as like, who's going to run and who do I want to win and who has the best chance. She's has everything going for her. You know, governor from a really important Midwestern, but like Rust Belt state that is very purple, and great charisma, very no nonsense, can demonstrate that she's actually been an effective executive, talks about the things that matter to people. And then she just kind of disappeared after 2024, like from the national stage. She, in over a couple of things, worked with the president to protect her state, which I think, you know, is a very understandable thing to do. It could be a liability for her at some point, though I actually think people will respect it and appreciate, you know, reaching across the aisle, yada, yada. But like, it's not the J.B. Pritzker model of like two fingers up to Trump all the time. Then like, I think maybe it was last week or within the last 2 weeks, she said, I am not running. And then like 24 hours later said, well, I'm definitely not running. I just haven't made any plans yet. So at first I had her as a 3 because I hadn't heard that she went back on that and said, oh, maybe. You know, as a woman, I am sure that there are plenty of women who are thinking, do I really want to put myself through this when clearly the country is not ready to vote for a woman? It tends to be the really sensible people who are like, I'm not doing that. Running for president is a miserable experience. Anyway, I hope she will. I really like her. I think she's an excellent, excellent candidate. Maybe the strongest on the list still for me.
She's my favorite by far. And, you know, spending time in Michigan for the last election and talking to people, both Republicans and Democrats like her. You know, she's well respected in her home state. They think she's no nonsense and they think she gets shit done. And I think that she would be a great candidate. Whether she wins the Democratic nomination, I don't know. But I think she'd be a great candidate for president for the Democratic Party. Once again, you're right, though. You know, the Democrats have put up 2 women and both of them have lost. And so you got to, you know, it's shit. That Gretchen would have to sit down and go, well, do I want to put myself through this? Don't know. I just think that she would. This is unfair to both Hillary and to Kamala Harris, but I think she would be the strongest of them to be elected. If that makes sense, you know what I mean? Like I'm not ranking their capability and CV. I'm just talking about she's from the Midwest. She's no nonsense. I don't know. I just feel like she would be the one that could probably. You know, break the duck.
Yeah.
Any others in there that you want to sort of call out? Amy Klobuchar. Really?
I feel like she's not going to run.
She's the Midwest version of Cory Booker.
Exactly. I think she probably enjoys running. It's a way to boost her profile. So maybe she goes in 3, right? Like it's a way to keep your name in the mix. It certainly does give you a little bit more power and influence to be a name that people have heard of. And she is. But yeah, I don't know. And the other folks on this list too are all kind of like maybe in 5 or 10 years.
Alyssa Slotkin, senator for Michigan, you mentioned before. I'm interested you put her in 2. I would put her in 3. I feel like she's just running around just to try and build her brand for a run in the future.
No, I agree. As we're talking through these, there are a couple of these that I would shuffle into 3. Yeah, I think they're definitely doing this to increase their profile. They are making serious motions, so I think they are likely to actually get in, but to do it so that they can raise their profile and start to build a war chest. And so, I think the like Wes Moore, Chris Murphy, Alyssa Slotkin, Ruben Gallego, like they maybe even Ro Khanna, who I have as a 1, but maybe he's in that bag too.
I mean, Ruben Gallego,
Gallego.
Gallego, thank you. Like he literally has been around for 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. But he is Latino.
He's only literally worked out where his car park spot is in the Senate when he goes to work. Like this is how fresh he is.
Right. But he's got like military background, Latino from the like border area between like the Southwest and Mexico. That has a very particular demographic. Lots of Latinos, but they tend to vote more conservatively. And those are actually, we've talked about this a million times, right? The Democrats have lost many of those voters to Trump in the last couple elections. I think Gallego is in the mix because he is one of the people who can start to hopefully bring those voters back. It's like the trucks and flags and, that kind of demographic.
And finally, tier 3, you've got a couple of crackers in there. Do tell.
Yeah. I just put Jon Stewart and Mr. Beast in there because I was trying to think of like who are the like Tucker Carlsons for us. I mean, unfortunately, I think Tucker Carlson is like actually seriously considering it. But who are the folks on our side who have a big audience, are on side with politics and like might actually joke around about running? I actually don't have a long list of those. The other one that always gets talked about, Michelle Obama, everybody always like wants her to run for president. And of course she never will. That's not happening. But we've got to live to dream.
One other to throw in there as well. From ESPN, Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah. I'm not super familiar with him. I'm not a sports guy, but yeah, he's a good one.
He's saying a lot of stuff. He's talking a lot of politics on his podcast for a sports guy.
Yeah,
he's got views about the Democratic Party and
that's what we need.
Yeah, well, that's a long list, so that's going to be they're going to need a really big amphitheater to have everyone on the stage for the debate, and everyone's going to get 30 seconds, so that's it, because then that'll be the hour up.
Yeah.
But we will wait and see. Katie Parsons, thanks so much again for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. Lots to think about between now and the midterms, and we'll have to get you back on again in the lead up to the midterms in November this year. Yeah,
that sounds great. This is always fun. Makes me think about things more concretely, which is not a bad thing.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Hey, Social Democrats. Thanks for listening. Today's episode was hosted by myself, Stephen Donnelly, and produced by Grace Eyre. If you like the show, please rate us and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really like the show, then join our Patreon community for early and ad-free access to each episode. We regularly take questions and comments from our Patreon members, so get in there if you want to have your say. And finally, get all the latest updates and bonus content by following Socially Democratic on our social media channels. The links are in our show notes. See you next Friday.